Now let's go ahead and do how we utilize, now that we know how to do the settings on the Fibonacci properties, let's go ahead and start applying this to the ABCD. So again, high to low, it was an example of what not to do. And unfortunately, that was what you're going to see very often on people who attempt to butcher this poor tool, sadly. Okay? So what our job is to then do is take a little bit more time, a little bit more thoughtfulness, and find last major moves. Okay, that is our battle cry for Fibonacci. Okay, I cannot say that enough. Last major move. I want you to think about that whenever you're doing Fibonacci. Last means what? What's the best way to kind of define our last major move? Last is our most recent. Major is significant. And move is rally or sell-off. Okay? That is what we're on the hunt for. So, as we're doing our Fibonacci here, as we're trying to figure out what we're doing, and we're kind of rolling into a little bit more advanced now. We talked about what Fibonacci was. We talked about how to set it up, finding last major moves. Now we're going to get to work on this. Now, sometimes there are last major moves that are sell-offs, and sometimes there are last major moves that are rallies. Okay? And that typo is going to drive me crazy, so let me fix that. There we go. Okay, so notice the move from A to B was a rally. The move from B to C was a sell-off, and the move from C to D was a rally. Okay? A to B is pretty clean. There was a little bit of retracement action going on up here, but it's fairly clean. Okay? B to C, I'll tell you, was not as clean. I'm going to expand this a little bit because we had this hiccup here, this little move. I'll tell you, I could probably add in, and we probably should, so I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to add in BB, because that little hiccup there was probably enough to nullify B, and I might want to use BB to C. Then finally I have C to D, which was another rally. And quite frankly, you know, are there smaller and smaller levels? Absolutely. And here's the problem, though. If you start finding these tiny, tiny levels, like let's say D to E, and you start looking at progressively smaller and smaller levels, at some point you're abandoning that major or significant aspect. So it's last major move, most recent significant rally or sell-off. Is D to E significant? It's most recent, no argument there, but is it significant? Not when I compare it to BB to C. But we can do all of these. So in your very beginning stages of using this tool, you're going to have a chart that looks a lot like this. You're looking for the highs and lows, the peak and the valley of each of the rallies and sell-offs that you think might qualify as a last major move. And mark them all down, because like I said, there's no such thing as one last major move. You might have multiple. You might have one for a sell-off. You might have one for a rally. Okay? So I'm going to grab my Fibonacci tool. I can either do that by going into the toolbar here and going to Fibonacci retracement, or I can go to Insert, Fibonacci, and grab it that way, whatever you want. So let's draw the first one. Okay, I'm going to go from A to B. Now, I will tell you, it probably wouldn't hurt to expand the chart when you're doing this. And the reason for that is the IBFX tool for Fibonacci drawing has this great snap to feature. If you get really close to the candles, it'll snap to the high or low of that candle. So you really don't have to struggle with getting that perfect placement. It'll snap to, and it gives you a really good reading. So expanding it will give you much more accurate placement of where this red line, which is the last major move basically, right? In fact, let me just go ahead. I'm going to go into Fibonacci properties, and just for our purposes here, I'm going to thicken it up just so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay? So you can see there, last major move was a rally. In fact, you know what? Since we're going and changing colors, I'm going to go ahead and make the rallies green, and we'll make the sell-offs red. So you can see last major rally, A to B. Now, let's find out what A to B did. Okay? Number one, were there any, as A to B was coming back down, okay, was there any respect to the 25%? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. Remember, this is in the past now, okay? So A to B would have been drawn as soon as this high at B was made and we started moving down lower, a candle or two. Remember that. So we are going back in time a little bit. But could this still be a valid last major move? It could be. I don't think it's going to be, but it could be. So A to B. Now, since this was a last major move that was a rally, in the case of a rally, if prices make a higher high, in other words, we make a high higher than the B, okay, it immediately nullifies this move. Let me say that again. In the case of a rally, A to B, if we make a high that is higher than the B, right here, this B point, it nullifies this as a last major move. We can make lower lows because at that point now we're going into our extensions, right? That's no problem. But we cannot make a higher high. Everybody clear on that? That would nullify the move from A to B. Now, what am I looking for? Well, when all I had was the last major move from A to B, this was all I could have considered. And I got to tell you, there probably wasn't a lot of respect to many of the levels until we had this sharp sell-off and it hit the 618. By the way, I am not choosing I'm not looking at the well-chosen example. You guys know from, if you've been joining me here for any length of time, I use live current charts. I never choose the well-chosen example and slap it on a PowerPoint because that does none of us any good. It makes it boring for me and it makes it useless for you. I want you guys to see what's really happening in this market right now, whether it's working or not. This is relatively, in fact, this is today's action on the Aussie. We can look at another chart if you want as well. Let me know what time frame, what pair, and I'll be happy to do it. Okay? So you notice we really didn't get a lot of good respect, price action respect for any of these potential support levels until we hit the 618. That's the golden mean, by the way. The 618 is the Mac Daddy of the Fibonacci world. That's what you'll hear referred to as the golden mean. Doesn't mean that it's the one that works all the time, but it's a very important one because basically Fibonacci told us so. Okay? So 618 is that golden mean. It's not uncommon that that is often the level that a lot of people will watch, and it's the level that a lot of people will notice works very, very well. 618, golden mean. Now, let me mention another thing. Because we had a move from A to B, again, you can see from the green line, it was a rally. What does Fibonacci presuppose, as I mentioned again? It presupposes that there's going to be reversal of this last major move, which was a rally, and prices will head down lower. What is Fibonacci plotting? Let's come full circle again. Everything is support and resistance. So what we're seeing here is essentially all the support levels that Fibonacci is saying could hold prices as we are basically picking up the breadcrumbs heading back towards where we were at A. We're retracing our steps. We ran from A to B, and now we're retracing our steps. And as we go there, these are all going to be potential support levels that could hold prices. The one you saw that worked the best, the 382, maybe a little bit. You know, we fell a little bit short, but we did bounce from kind of close to that level. The 618, you can see, we kind of stopped there after this very sharp sell-off. Of all the places we could have stopped between this huge area of prices, notice it was pretty much right at that 618. And it could have stopped anywhere, and it pretty much stopped on top of it, didn't it? Okay? And that's basically how price action went. Now, if there was no